Namaste, Astrology Adventures. How do we see what makes a person tick in the astrology chart? How they're wired? That's what I want to talk about today. Let's discuss. I'm your host, Paul Manley, and you're watching Light on Vedic Astrology. Once I was talking to a good friend of mine named Daniel Paul, who's a professional tabla player, plays classical Indian music. And he studied with Ali Akbar Khan, Zakir Hussain, so some of the best Indian musicians. And he's been playing for a long time, 50 years. And so he'd have these small concerts on the island that I live on, Maui. And so it was kind of an informal event. And so he would interact with the audience and he would count out the beats. So sometimes there would be a 16 beat tal or meter, which is tin tal, or it would be a 7 beat meter, which is rupak tal, or it would be a 10 beat meter, which is jap tal. In any case, it's complex, these beats. This is not just like 4/4 time. So each tala is like how a person is wired. Okay, just think of it like that. What makes them tick? What's the beat of their own drum? What's the underlying basic beat that is playing in the background of their life? In Ayurveda, this is called prakriti, our natural constitution. That's our nature. This is how I am. This often, not always, boils down to a main planet that drives the person, which we could call the planetary type. How do we find the planetary type in the chart? If it's going to boil down to one planet that we could use as kind of like a typology, you can think of them as this type, then this is useful for interpretation and when we're analyzing a chart, because this is the beat that person is going to come back to. This is their main core nature. Okay, so it's helpful to identify this. So Ken Rao says that first and foremost, in significance in the chart is the ascendant and the ascendant lord. The ascendant and the ascendant lord. I mean, it's pretty basic to astrology. The ascendant is the Mula, the root of the chart, the base. It's the stamba, or the main pillar of the chart. I mean, it starts the whole house system. From that point, the ascendant, the lagna, is called the first house. So it's where it all begins. So yes, ascendant and ascendant lord, you gotta look there. I mean, that's going to be the primary place that we're going to derive the information, whether there's a planet that we can narrow down to a planetary type. So this is how we can find our planetary type, or look at the planet that makes the most contacts or conjunctions, aspects onto the ascendant or the ascendant lord. That's fair enough, right? The ascendant lord. Look at what planets aspect or are placed in the ascendant, or aspecting or conjunct with the ascendant lord. That could be it. That could be the main planet that could describe a person or their planetary type. But then you can add on to that the sun and the moon. So why? Sun is these two are personality indicators in the chart. And so you could say collectively, the ascendant lord, sun and moon are the personality indicators in the chart, the primary ones that we are going to derive a person's main character traits. This, you could say, from these four, we should be able to ascertain how a person is wired, what makes them tick, and what is their planetary type. We could just stop at the ascendant and ascendant lord. That could be enough. But the sun is our outer public life. It's the karaka of the 10th house. It's yang. It's expressive, outgoing. Contrary, the moon is our inner private life, represents our inner private life. So there's a polar opposite. Polar opposites. Moon is yin. Moon is reflective, introspective is ingoing. So it represents our psychology. So our thoughts, our thought patterns, what we think about a lot, that's the moon. So obviously that's going to play into our personality. If a planet is aspecting the moon, for instance, it could be what we think about a lot, where we, what we ruminate about a lot. But the sun is our expressive. So it is how people identify us, the roles we play, our public persona. But we could really be more like the moon. So how do we drive? We keep going. We don't just look at the main planets or count up the main planetary influences on the ascendant Lord. We also see what planetary influences or contacts or aspects, conjunctions that are being made from other planets on the sun and the moon. Okay. So oftentimes this is an exercise in counting up the quantitative factors. Which planet is aspecting the most onto the ascendant Lord, sun, and moon. However, this is just quantitative. This is not taking into account the qualitative factors. Okay, so like we have to be aware of the qualitative factors as well. The ascendant and the ascendant Lord have more weight than the sun and moon. So what about a planet in dignity, high dignity, exalted planet, a planet in its Mula trachona sign? It's also going to have more strength of, let's say, the planets that aspect the ascendant. If the ascendant Lord is in its own sign, in the ascendant, whereas another planet is aspecting and it's in a weaker dignity, then we give preference to the planet with stronger dignity. So that could certainly stands out. Like, think of the Gary Larson Far Side cartoon. There's a field of penguins and one was standing up and saying, I just got to be me. He just got to stand out. So the planet that stands out amongst the others, this is what we want to identify. But also not just planet exalted or in strength by sign position, a planet that's vargottama, a planet in the same sign in the Navamsha chart as in the natal chart, that has special strength. So this is strength factors. A planet in Dikbala or directional strength in an angular house, like the Jupiter and Mercury in the ascendant, like Moon and Venus in the 4th house, like Saturn in the 7th house, like Sun and Mars in the 10th house. You get directional strength or Dikbala. So this is an added strength. Also, planet could be in an angular house and is forming a mahapurusha yoga. It could be in its own sign in an angular house, and that is a special strength as well, which will give prominence and importance. Could it override and make the planet that planetary type? What I would say is if a planet is aspecting the ascendant Lord, sun and moon, and is in Dikbala, or is forming a mahapurusha yoga or a strong yoga, like a Raja yoga, Dana yoga, this gives extra strength to that aspect. But we're still focusing on the ascendant Lord, sun and moon. In that order, you could say. Maybe moon and sun. Okay, so this is a technique that you can work with to find the planetary type. And then you have an edge in your interpretation. You know that they're going to come back to that main tendency or pattern. You know, if Mars is the main planetary type, let's say Mars is the ascendant Lord. The ascendant is Scorpio. Mars is in the 7th house. So it aspects to Scorpio. Let's say it's also conjunct with the sun. Well, now Mars is aspecting the ascendant. It rules the ascendant. it's with the sun, well, you can really hang your hat on that is a strong influence on their basic nature. This could mean that they can be described as a Mars planetary type. That's useful because then you know they're likely to have tendencies towards impatience. They can be highly ambitious. If Mars is in the 7th house, then they can have power struggles in relationships, et cetera, et cetera. But so it gives us some core patterns to look out for. So that's the utility of finding out the planetary type. So this is a great way to begin a reading. Find the planetary type. Look at the ascendant very closely. Look at the ascendant lord. Look at the sun and moon. You can go a step further. Look at the Atma Karaka, the planet with the highest longitudinal degrees. These are all important. So then we weigh the factors. This is Uha Poha Patu, which is what Sage Prashara describes as weighing the various factors and coming out with an accurate conclusion. So useful technique. I hope you enjoy playing with this. I'm sure it'll be helpful for you. And thanks for watching. I look forward to our next video, hopefully soon. Namaste.